Captain Deho stared at his sensor screen and felt his blood run cold. In 20 years of service to the Vault-Tec Empire, he had never seen anything like this. His patrol cruiser drifted near the edge of the dead zone, a region of space so empty and worthless that even pirates avoided it. Nothing ever happened here. Until today. The ships appeared without warning. One moment his sensors showed empty space. The next moment, hundreds of vessels materialized as if they had simply blinked into existence. No warp signatures. No hyperspace tunnels. No energy trails. They were just suddenly there, hanging in the void like ghosts. Deho's tactical officer, a young Vault-Tec named Hyuk, turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, I'm reading 317 vessels. Classification unknown. Design unknown. They don't match anything in our database." "Weapon status?" Deho asked, keeping his voice steady even though his hearts were racing. "They're armed, but I can't identify the weapon systems. Sir, their hull composition doesn't make sense. It's reading as steel and titanium alloys. That's primitive material. No civilization uses that for warships anymore." Deho studied the tactical display. The unknown fleet maintained perfect formation, moving with mechanical precision toward Vault-Tec space. Their ships were angular and ugly compared to the smooth curves of Vault-Tec design. They looked almost crude. But something about them made Deho uneasy. Nothing crude could move with such perfect coordination. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "All frequencies." Hyuk worked his console. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Deho of the Vault-Tec Imperial Patrol ship Crimson Dawn. You are entering Imperial space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately and state your intentions." Static. Then, nothing. The fleet continued forward, ignoring the hail completely. Deho tried again. "Unknown fleet, this is your final warning. Identify yourselves or we will consider you hostile. Our empire has defended this space for 3,000 years. Turn back now." Still nothing. The ships just kept coming, their formation never wavering. "Sir," Hyuk said nervously. "Should we withdraw and call for reinforcements?" Deho considered it. Protocol said he should. But, if he ran from an unidentified fleet without even attempting reconnaissance, he would be demoted. The Vault-Tec Empire did not reward cowardice. Besides, his ship was a military vessel with shields and weapons. These unknown ships might be harmless traders or explorers who simply didn't understand Vault-Tec language. "Take us closer," Deho ordered. "Slow approach. Keep shields at maximum. I want a detailed scan of those vessels." The Crimson Dawn moved forward. Deho watched the distance close on his display. 5,000 kilometers. 4,000. 3,000. The unknown ship still showed no reaction. "Getting better scans now," Hyuk reported. "Sir, these readings are strange. Their power signatures are enormous, but I can't identify the reactor type. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not zero-point energy. It's something else entirely. What about crew? Life signs are unusual. They read as carbon-based, oxygen-breathing. Similar to some species we know, but the exact biology doesn't match our records. 2,000 kilometers now." Deho could see the ships clearly on his view screen. They were painted in strange patterns, symbols and markings he didn't recognize. One large vessel had what looked like a circular emblem with red and blue sections. Another had a red circle on white background. The largest ship bore a flag with red, white, and blue stripes and a field of stars. "Those are flags," Deho realized. "Military insignia. These aren't traders. This is a war fleet. Before Hyuk could respond, one of the unknown ships rotated slightly. A weapon port on its side glowed with sudden energy. Shields up. Daeho shouted, but it was too late. The weapon fired. It wasn't a plasma beam or a missile. It was something else, a lance of concentrated energy that crossed 2,000 kilometers in an instant. The beam struck the Crimson Dawn's shields and passed through them as if they didn't exist. Daeho felt the ship shudder. Alarms screamed. Half his console went dark. Engine room is offline. Hyuk reported. They hit our main reactor with surgical precision. We still have life support and sensors, but we can't move. Sir, they bypassed our shields completely. That's impossible. Our shield technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Daeho stared at the unknown fleet in shock. They had disabled his ship with a single shot, carefully targeting the engines without destroying the vessel. That level of precision required incredible technology and, even more incredible skill. This wasn't luck. They knew exactly what they were doing. The fleet continued past his crippled ship, ignoring it completely. They had bigger targets in mind. Send an emergency transmission, Daeho ordered. Maximum priority. Tell Imperial Command everything. Unknown fleet entering our space. Technology level beyond our current understanding. They can bypass our shields. They're heading toward the inner colonies. Hyuk worked frantically at his damaged console. Transmission away, sir. But our communications array is failing. I don't know if the full message got through. Daeho watched the unknown fleet disappear into the distance. His hands trembled slightly. In 20 years of military service, he had fought pirates, rebels, and rival empires. He had never been afraid. But, now, watching those strange angular ships vanish into the black, he felt genuine fear. The Vault-Tec Empire had ruled this sector of space for 3,000 years. They were the dominant military power. No one could challenge them. Until now. On the Imperial homeworld of Valthos Prime, High Commander Rock reviewed the partial transmission from the Crimson Dawn. Most of it was corrupted, but the key words came through clearly. Unknown fleet. Technology beyond understanding. The message made no sense. The Vault-Tec had the most advanced technology in known space. Nothing was beyond their understanding. Rock dismissed it as sensor malfunction or perhaps a smuggler trick to distract patrol ships. He sent a standard response, a battle group of 12 capital ships to investigate. More than enough to handle any problem. He filed the report and moved on to other matters. He had no idea he had just made the worst mistake of his career. Far away, on a colony world called Outpost 47, a young woman named Ji-won looked up at the night sky. She was human, taken from Earth as a child during the Vault-Tec raids decades ago. She had spent most of her life working in the mining pits, alongside thousands of other human slaves. The Vault-Tec treated them like tools, not people. They worked until they died, and, then, the Vault-Tec took more humans to replace them. Ji-won barely remembered Earth. She had vague memories of blue skies and her mother's face. But, mostly she remembered the day the Vault-Tec ships arrived. The burning cities. The screaming. The metal collars they put on everyone's necks. Tonight was different though. The Vault-Tec guards were acting strange. They kept checking their communication devices and talking in urgent voices. Some of them looked scared. Ji-won had never seen a Vault-Tec look scared before. In orbit above the colony, something appeared. Ships. Hundreds of them. They moved into position silently, surrounding the world. Ji-won could see them with her naked eyes, gleaming in the starlight. Then, a message broadcast across every frequency, in perfect Vault-Tec language, you took our people. We want them back. G1's heart stopped. That voice. It was speaking Vault-Tec, but the accent was wrong. It sounded almost human. The guards started running. Some toward their posts. Some toward the spaceport. Chaos spread through the colony. And G1 stood there, staring at the sky, wondering if this was real or just another dream. She had dreamed of rescue so many times. But, this time, the ships were real. And, they weren't leaving. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt completely confident. The Eternal Dominion was 2 kilometers of pure military power. He had fought in 200 campaigns across 50 years. He had destroyed rebel fleets, crushed pirate strongholds, and conquered entire star systems. Today would be just another easy victory. His battle group consisted of 12 capital ships, the pride of the Vault-Tec military. Each one could reduce a planet's surface to glass. Together, they were unstoppable. Or so he believed. The unknown fleet waited for them at the Crimson Nebula. Taemin studied them on his view screen. 317 ships in perfect formation. They hadn't tried to hide or run. They just sat there, as if daring him to attack. Arrogant fools, Taemin muttered. His tactical officer, a veteran named Bong, nodded in agreement. Sir, should we attempt communication again? Why not? Let's give them one last chance to surrender. Taemin opened a channel. Unknown vessels, this is Commander Taemin of the Vault-Tec Imperial Navy. You are in violation of Imperial space. Your attack on our patrol ship was an act of war. Surrender immediately and you will be treated as prisoners. Resist and you will be destroyed. The response came quickly this time. A woman's voice, cold and clear, we are the Korean Defense Fleet. We are the Japanese Liberation Armada. We are the United Earth Retribution Force. We are everyone you ever underestimated. We are humanity. And we do not surrender. Taemin laughed out loud. Humanity. We crushed your pathetic world 70 years ago. You scattered like insects across the galaxy. And now you dare challenge the Vault-Tec Empire with stolen ships. Open fire. Destroy them all. The Eternal Dominion's weapons came alive. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids fired in continuous streams. Missiles launched in swarms, each one capable of destroying a city. Energy beams that had ended civilizations carved through space. The entire battle group unleashed everything they had. The void turned bright with destruction. Taemin watched his tactical display with satisfaction. No shields could withstand this kind of firepower. The human fleet would be obliterated in seconds. But, something was wrong. The human ships were still there. Their shields glowed with absorbed energy, but they held. They weren't even trying to dodge. Impossible, Bong whispered. Our weapons should have overwhelmed their shields immediately. What kind of defensive technology is this? The human fleet opened fire. Their weapons were different. Instead of plasma or energy beams, they fired solid projectiles. But, these weren't ordinary railgun rounds. They accelerated to impossible speeds, becoming relativistic kill missiles. When they hit, they didn't explode. They simply punched through shields and armor like they were paper. One of Taemin's capital ships, the Dominance, took a direct hit. The projectile entered through the bow and exited through the stern, traveling through the entire ship in a microsecond. Everything in its path simply ceased to exist. The ship broke in half and began to tumble. The human ships also used energy weapons, but not like any Taemin had seen. Their beams didn't just hit shields. They somehow turned the shields against themselves, creating feedback loops that overloaded the generators. The Victory's shields collapsed in seconds, then, the ship itself exploded as a human torpedo struck its reactor. Evasive maneuvers. Taemin shouted. All ships scatter and return fire. But the Vault-Tec capital ships were designed for overwhelming firepower, not agility. They moved like floating fortresses. The human ships, by contrast, moved like fighters. Their smaller vessels darted between the capital ships, firing from impossible angles. Their larger ships stayed back, methodically targeting the Vault-Tec vessels with deadly precision. The Eternal Unity exploded. The Imperial Hammer went dark, its reactor offline. The Endless Victory tumbled out of formation, engines destroyed. Within 5 minutes, Taemin had lost 4 capital ships and 3 more were badly damaged. "Sir," Bong said urgently. "We need to retreat. Their technology is too advanced. We can't win this fight." Retreat? Taemin couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Vault-Tec Empire never retreated. But, as he watched another of his ships die, he realized Bong was right. They were being slaughtered. "All ships, fall back to," the Eternal Dominion shuddered violently. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Multiple hull breaches. Shield generators offline. Main weapons disabled. "We're hit." Bong reported unnecessarily. "Decks 7 through 23 are venting atmosphere. We've lost half our weapons batteries. Engine power is down to 30%. Taemin stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 7 of his 12 ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had barely taken any damage. How was this possible? The Vault-Tec were supposed to be superior. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had technology refined over thousands of years. A communication came through. The same woman's voice from before, "Commander Taemin. This is Admiral Soare of the Earth Defense Ship Taegukgi Rising. Your battle group is broken. 7 of your ships are destroyed. The rest will follow unless you surrender immediately." Taemin looked around his damaged bridge. Smoke filled the air. Wounded crew members lay on the deck. His beautiful flagship was dying around him. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Information. You will transmit the location of every human slave in your empire. Every prison. Every labor camp. Every colony where our people are held. You will give us everything. And, if I refuse, then, I will reduce your flagship to atoms, and, then, I will do the same to every Vault-Tec military installation until someone gives me what I want. Choose now." Taemin felt rage and shame wash over him. He was a commander of the Vault-Tec Empire. He had served with honor for 50 years. And, now he was being ordered to surrender by humans. By slaves. By the species they had dismissed as primitive and weak. But, he was also practical. His battle group was destroyed. His ship was dying. If he refused, everyone would die for nothing. "Send them the data," he ordered quietly. Bong hesitated. "Sir, that information is classified. If we send it." Taemin roared. "Do you want to die here? Do you want to watch the rest of our ships burn? Send them the data." Bong transmitted the files. Records of every human slave taken over the past 70 years. Over 2 million people scattered across 300 worlds. Prison camps. Labor colonies. Research facilities. All of it. Admiral Soare reviewed the data in silence. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than before. 2 million people. You took 2 million of us. You worked them until they died. You beat them. You broke them. And you called yourselves civilized. We conquered you fairly, Taemin said, trying to sound defiant. This is how empires work. The strong rule the weak. No, Soare replied. This is how empires fall. You're looking at your past, Commander. We were weak 70 years ago. You crushed our world. You took our people. And you thought that was the end of it. But you made one mistake. What mistake? You let some of us escape. A few million humans fled into deep space while you were busy celebrating your victory. We built colony ships. We found hidden worlds. And we spent 70 years doing one thing, preparing for this moment. Every day. Every year. Building ships. Advancing our technology. Training soldiers. All for today. Taemin said nothing. What could he say? We're going to every world in your empire, Soare continued. We're going to free every human slave. And, if your people resist, we will go through them. Tell your High Commander. Tell your council. Tell everyone. Humanity has returned. And, we remember everything you did to us. The human fleet withdrew, leaving Taemin's crippled battle group floating in the wreckage. 5 ships remained functional enough to limp home. 7 were destroyed completely. It was the worst defeat in Vault-Tec military history. As the Eternal Dominion crawled toward friendly space, Taemin sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. He thought about his career. His victories. His pride. All of it meant nothing now. The humans had returned. And the Empire would never be the same. Ji-1 heard the explosions before she saw anything. The deep rumbling shook the ground beneath her feet. She was in the mining pit, working like she did every day, when the alarm started screaming. The other human slaves looked up in confusion. Alarms meant danger. But, danger from what? The Vault-Tec guards abandoned their posts. Ji-1 watched them run toward the spaceport, their weapons forgotten. She had never seen them afraid before. The Vault-Tec didn't get afraid. They were the conquerors. The masters. The ones who controlled everything. An older man named Sung-hoon grabbed Ji-1's arm. What's happening? I don't know, she admitted. But, something big. Look at the guards. More explosions. These ones were closer. The ground shook harder. Dust fell from the ceiling of the mining pit. Some slaves screamed. Others just stood there, too tired and broken to care anymore. Then, the message came. Every speaker in the colony activated at once. Every screen. Every communication device. A voice spoke in Vault-Tec language, but, with an accent Ji-1 had almost forgotten. An accent from Earth. This is Captain Yuna of the Earth defense ship Incheon's Wrath. All human prisoners are to report to the primary landing zone immediately. Any Vault-Tec personnel who interfere will be eliminated. Any Vault-Tec personnel who surrender will be detained. You have 10 minutes. The mining pit went silent. 2,000 human slaves stood frozen, trying to process what they had just heard. Earth? That was impossible. Earth was destroyed. The Vault-Tec had crushed it 70 years ago. It's a trick, someone whispered. The Vault-Tec are testing us. But, Ji-1 didn't think so. She remembered the strange ships in orbit. She remembered the scared guards. And, she remembered something her mother had told her, right before the Vault-Tec took her away: never give up hope. Never. It's real, Ji-1 said loudly. We need to go. Now. But, what if it's not? Sung-hoon asked. What if we go to the landing zone and they punish us? Then, we die, Ji-1 said simply. But, we die trying. I'd rather die trying to escape than spend one more day in this pit. She started walking. Toward the exit. Toward the surface. Toward freedom or death, she didn't care which anymore. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Other slaves following. Then, more. Then, everyone. 2,000 people moving as one. They climbed out of the mining pit and saw the sky. Ships hung in orbit. Human ships. Real ones. G1 could see the markings. Flags from Earth nations. Symbols she recognized from old stories her mother told her. Korea. Japan. America. Nations that were supposed to be dead. The landing zone was chaos. Thousands of humans converged from different parts of the colony. Workers from the factories. Prisoners from the detention centers. Children from the education camps where the Vault-Tec tried to make them forget their humanity. Everyone was running. Vault-Tec guards stood at the checkpoints, but they didn't stop anyone. They just watched, their weapons lowered. Governor Hyuk had ordered them to stand down. He wasn't stupid. He had seen what happened to the battle group at Crimson Nebula. The humans had destroyed 7 Vault-Tec capital ships in 17 minutes. His garrison troops wouldn't last 17 seconds. Ships descended from orbit. Beautiful ships. Sleek and powerful. They landed in the open field, their ramps extending. G1 ran faster. She had to get there. She had to see if this was real. A man in military uniform walked down the first ramp. He was human. Korean, by the look of him. He wore a uniform G1 didn't recognize, but it had the Korean flag on the shoulder. Behind him came soldiers in powered armor, carrying weapons that looked advanced beyond anything the Vault-Tec had. The man raised his hands for silence. Slowly, the crowd quieted. Thousands of eyes watched him. Waiting. Hoping. "My name is Commander Jin-ho of the Korean Defense Fleet," he said. His voice was strong and clear. 70 years ago, the Vault-Tec invaded Earth. They took millions of us. They thought we were weak because we were divided. They thought we would die quietly in their labor camps. They were wrong. He paused, looking across the crowd. G1 saw tears in his eyes. We spent 7 decades preparing. We built a fleet in the darkness beyond their sensors. We advanced our technology in ways they couldn't imagine. We trained soldiers. We built weapons. And, now we're here. We're here to bring every single one of you home. Someone in the crowd started crying. Then, someone else. Then, everyone. G1 felt tears on her own face. She didn't try to wipe them away. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd. She was thin and weak, her body bent from years of labor. "Is Earth still there?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Or is it destroyed?" Jin-ho smiled. It was the saddest, most beautiful smile G1 had ever seen. "Earth is more than there. Earth is thriving. We rebuilt. We united. The Vault-Tec tried to break us. They only made us stronger. We have a fleet of over 1,500 warships now. And every single one of them has one mission: bring our people home." The loading began. Medical teams moved through the crowd, checking people. The freed slaves were malnourished. Many had scars. Some had cybernetic implants the Vault-Tec used to track and control them. The medical teams worked carefully, removing the implants, treating injuries, offering water and food. G1 waited in line. She watched the ships load. Families staying together. Parents holding children. Old people being carried on stretchers. Everyone was going home. When it was her turn, a medic examined her. Young woman. Korean. She had kind eyes. "Any injuries?" the medic asked. "Just the tracking implant," G1 said. "In my neck." The medic scanned it. "We can remove that." It'll take a few minutes. The procedure is painless. Ji-won nodded. She sat while the medic worked. The implant had been there for 20 years. Part of her. A constant reminder that the Vault Hek owned her. When the medic finally pulled it out, Ji-won felt lighter. Free in a way she hadn't been since childhood. All done, the medic said. Welcome home, sister. Ji-won boarded the ship. Inside, it smelled clean. The air was filtered and fresh. The walls were painted with murals of Earth. Oceans. Mountains. Cities. Things Ji-won had almost forgotten existed. She found a seat and strapped in. Through the window, she watched more people board. The ships were loading fast. Commander Jin-ho had said they needed to evacuate the entire colony before the Vault Hek could respond with military force. Captain Yuna's voice came over the intercom. All personnel, prepare for departure. Medical teams, finalize your counts. Engineering, status report. Ji-won felt the ship lift off. She pressed her face against the window, watching Outpost 47 shrink below. The mining pits where she had worked. The barracks where she had slept. The walls that had imprisoned her. All of it getting smaller and smaller. In orbit, human warships moved into position. They fired on the military installations. Precise strikes. The barracks where guards lived. The communication towers. The defense platforms. Everything that represented Vault Hek military power turned to slag. But, they didn't touch the residential areas. The civilians were left alone. Ji-won noticed that. The humans could have destroyed everything. Could have killed everyone. But, they didn't. They only destroyed military targets. We're not like them, someone said. Ji-won turned. An older man sat beside her. Sung-hoon from the mining pit. What do you mean? The Vault Hek. When they came to Earth, they didn't care about civilians. They bombed cities. Killed millions. But, look. He pointed out the window. The humans are being careful. Only military targets. They're better than the Vault Hek ever were. Ji-won thought about that. She had spent 20 years hating the Vault Hek. Dreaming of revenge. If someone had given her a weapon and told her to destroy Outpost 47 completely, she might have done it. But, the humans weren't doing that. They were being precise. Controlled. They were showing mercy even to their enemies. The ship accelerated toward deep space. Toward the fleet. Toward Earth. Ji-won closed her eyes and let herself believe it. After 20 years of slavery. After 20 years of pain. She was going home. On the bridge, Captain Yuna reviewed the evacuation numbers. 47 colonies liberated. 500,000 humans freed. 253 colonies still to go. Ma'am, her tactical officer said. We're receiving reports that the Vault Hek are mobilizing their grand fleet. They're coming for us. Yuna nodded. She had expected this. The Vault Hek couldn't let humanity just take their slaves and leave. They would respond with overwhelming force. They would try to crush the human fleet once and for all. Send a message to Admiral Bangcha, Yuna ordered. Tell her it's time. We're going to the threshold. The threshold was a system on the edge of the dead zone. A place where humanity would make its final stand. Either they would win and break the Vault Hek Empire forever, or they would die trying. But, they would not surrender. Humanity had surrendered once before, 70 years ago. They had learned their lesson. Surrender didn't save you. It only made things worse. This time, they would fight. And, they would win. Because they had to. Because 2 million people were depending on them. Because Earth was depending on them. The ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying their precious cargo of freed slaves. Behind them, Outpost 47 burned. High Commander Rock stood before the Imperial Council and tried not to show fear. The council chamber was carved from a single mountain. Holographic displays surrounded them, showing the Empire's territory. But, today those displays showed something else. Red markers. Human fleet positions. Vault-Tec losses. Liberated colonies. The numbers kept growing. First Counselor Wrath stared at him with cold fury. The old Vault-Tec scales had faded to gray with age, but his eyes were still sharp. You told us this was a minor pirate incursion. You said it would be contained. Now we have lost 17 battle groups and 89 colonies are in revolt. Explain yourself. Rock chose his words carefully. Speaking the wrong thing could end his career. Or his life. The humans are not what we believed. When we conquered Earth 70 years ago, they were divided. Primitive. Their weapons were chemical projectiles and nuclear warheads. We crushed them easily. So what changed? Counselor Dawn demanded. Everything, Rock said. The humans who escaped went into deep space. They spent 70 years building. Advancing. Preparing. The species we face now is unified. Their technology in certain areas exceeds ours. Especially their weapons and shield penetration systems. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Impossible. The Vault-Tec were supreme. How could primitives surpass them? First Counselor Wrath slammed his hand on the table, demanding silence. Then, we will show them what true power means. We will assemble the Grand Fleet. Every capital ship. Every super dreadnought. Every weapon we possess. We will crush them utterly and make an example of their homeworld. Rock felt ice in his blood. The Grand Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon. 12 super dreadnoughts, each 10 kilometers long. 90 capital ships. 300 support vessels. Enough firepower to sterilize an entire solar system. The Grand Fleet had only been deployed twice in the last 1,000 years. Both times, entire civilizations had surrendered rather than face it. I recommend caution, Rock said. The humans have shown remarkable caution. Counselor Wrath interrupted. We have been cautious. We sent battle groups. We attempted diplomatic solutions. And, what happened? The humans destroyed our ships and freed our slaves. No more caution. We will destroy them completely. Assemble the fleet. Rock bowed his head. As you command. Far away, in the human fleet, Admiral Bong Cha received intelligence reports about the Grand Fleet's mobilization. She stood on the bridge of the Soul Ascendant, humanity's flagship supercarrier. Around her, holographic displays showed the strategic situation. The human fleet had freed 93 colonies. Over 500,000 slaves rescued. But, the cost had been heavy. 70 ships lost. Thousands of crew members dead. Lieutenant Dong Wu, her tactical officer, studied the reports. They're mobilizing everything. Every major warship in the Empire. They're going to come straight for Earth. How long until they arrive? 6 days. Maybe 7. They're slow, but, once they get moving, nothing will stop them. Bong Cha nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Vault-Tec couldn't let humanity just take their slaves and leave. Their pride wouldn't allow it. They would commit everything to crushing the human fleet. Send orders to all fleets, she commanded. Rally at the threshold. We make our stand there. The threshold system was humanity's chosen battlefield. It contained a massive asteroid field and the remnants of a supernova. Navigation was a nightmare. But it was also the gateway to Earth's location. If the Vault Heck wanted to find Earth, they had to go through the threshold first. 6 days later, the Grand Fleet arrived. Commander Taemin, given a chance to redeem his earlier failure, commanded the Vanguard. He had been demoted after losing his battle group at Crimson Nebula, but the Empire needed experienced commanders. Now he led 20 capital ships at the front of the massive formation. He saw the human fleet waiting. 400 ships in defensive formation. Fewer than he expected. The intelligence report said humanity had 1,500 warships. Where were the rest? They're hiding, his tactical officer suggested. Waiting to ambush us. Taemin studied the tactical display. The humans had positioned themselves in the asteroid field. Smart. The rocks would provide cover and make maneuvering difficult for the larger Vault-Heck ships. But it wouldn't matter. The Grand Fleet had too much firepower. They would simply blast through everything. Admiral Bongcha's voice broadcast across all frequencies, "You came for our homeworld. You will not reach it. This is where your empire ends." Taemin laughed bitterly. He had heard human confidence before, right before he lost 7 ships. But this time was different. This time the Vault-Heck had overwhelming numbers. All ships, advance. Standard battle formation. Destroy everything. The Grand Fleet moved forward like a wall of steel. Super dreadnoughts led the way, their massive hulls absorbing the first wave of human fire. The human fleet didn't retreat. They charged forward, straight into the Vault-Heck formation. "They're insane," Taemin's tactical officer said. "They're accepting a direct engagement against superior numbers." But Taemin understood. The humans weren't being reckless. They were being desperate. They couldn't let the Grand Fleet reach Earth. So they were throwing everything into stopping it here, even if it meant suicide. The two fleets collided. Space lit up with weapons fire. Human railgun projectiles tore through Vault-Heck armor. Vault-Heck plasma beams melted human hulls. Ships exploded on both sides. The asteroid field became a graveyard. Then, the asteroids themselves started moving. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted. "Mass driver platforms. Hidden among the asteroids. They're launching rocks at us." Taemin saw them on his display. Dozens of platforms activating simultaneously. They used magnetic acceleration to hurl asteroids at near light speed. The rocks became kinetic kill weapons, each one carrying the energy of a nuclear warhead. 3 super dreadnoughts died instantly. The asteroids punched through their shields and hulls like they were paper. Thousands of crew members died without even knowing what hit them. The Grand Fleet's perfect formation collapsed into chaos. "Evasive maneuvers," Taemin ordered. But the capital ships were too big and slow. They couldn't dodge. More asteroids struck home. The endless glory exploded. The Imperial Thunder went dark, reactor offline. The Eternal Victory tumbled out of control, engines destroyed. The human fleet pressed their advantage. Their ships were smaller and faster. They darted between the capital ships, firing from impossible angles. Human fighters swarmed like insects, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would kill any Vault-Heck from the G-forces alone. Admiral Bongcha watched the battle from her flagship. The plan was working. The asteroids had broken the Vault-Heck formation. Now her ships could engage at close range where their superior targeting systems dominated. But the cost was terrible. She watched her ships die on the tactical display. 70 gone already. But the Vault-Heck were losing 300. "All ships, execute Protocol Indomitable," she ordered. Her fleet charged directly into the center of the Vault-Heck formation. It was a brutal tactic. They accepted losses to get close enough to destroy the super-dreadnoughts. Human ships rammed Vault-Tec vessels, sacrificing themselves to cripple the giants. Captains stayed with their exploding ships to make sure their final shots counted. Taemin watched in horror as the Grand Fleet died around him. 5 super-dreadnoughts destroyed. 7 more damaged beyond repair. Over 200 capital ships gone. His Vanguard was shattered. And, still the humans kept coming, like they didn't care about dying. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer begged. "We've lost over half the fleet. If we stay, we'll all die." Taemin wanted to refuse. Wanted to fight. But, he had learned his lesson at Crimson Nebula. Pride wasn't worth dying for. All remaining ships, fall back. Maximum speed. The Grand Fleet retreated. What remained of it? Taemin counted the losses as his ship limped away. 8 super-dreadnoughts destroyed. 4 damaged. 60 capital ships gone. 200 support vessels missing. It was the worst military defeat in Vault-Tec history. The human fleet didn't pursue. They couldn't. They had taken terrible losses too. 70 ships destroyed. Another 50 badly damaged. Thousands dead. But, they had won. The Grand Fleet was broken. On Valthos Prime, the Imperial Council received the battle reports in stunned silence. The Grand Fleet. Their ultimate weapon. Defeated. Destroyed. Impossible. First Counselor Wrath stared at the casualty numbers. How many survived? 4 super-dreadnoughts. 30 capital ships. Less than a third of the fleet, Rock reported quietly. And, the humans? They lost approximately 120 ships. But, their main fleet remains intact. And, they still have over 1,000 warships stationed throughout former Imperial space. Counselor Gon spoke, his voice hollow. "We cannot defeat them." "Can we?" Rock said nothing. The silence was answer enough. The Vault-Tec Empire had ruled for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had believed themselves invincible. But, humanity had proven them wrong. Humanity, the species they had dismissed as primitive slaves, had broken their greatest fleet. And, now the Empire was dying. The Vault-Tec Empire began to fall apart from the inside. News of the Grand Fleet's defeat spread across their territory like fire. 3,000 years of dominance shattered in a single battle. Species that had been enslaved for generations saw their opportunity. If the mighty Vault-Tec could be defeated by humans, maybe freedom was possible. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds. The Kelter, a reptilian species enslaved for 800 years, seized control of their homeworld and declared independence. The Mern, insect-like beings used as disposable labor, overwhelmed their Vault-Tec overseers and took over 3 colony systems. The Far, who had been conquered so long ago they barely remembered freedom, rose up and reclaimed their ancestral worlds. Without the threat of overwhelming military force, the Empire's control evaporated. Worlds that had chafed under Vault-Tec rule for centuries finally broke free. Some reached out to humanity, asking for help. Others simply wanted to be left alone. Admiral Bongcha faced a difficult choice. The human fleet could press forward. They could attack Valthos Prime directly. Destroy the Imperial capital. Exact revenge for 70 years of slavery and suffering. She knew the freed slaves wanted it. The people on Earth demanded it. Justice required it. But, war required more than justice. She called a council meeting with her senior officers. They gathered in the Soul Ascendance conference room. Admiral Soare attended via hologram, her fleet still scattered across the former empire liberating the last human slaves. Captain Yuna was there in person, fresh from rescuing another colony. Commander Jin-ho joined them, his uniform still stained from carrying wounded slaves to medical ships. "We need to decide our next move," Bong-cha said. "The Vault-Tec Empire is broken. Their fleet is destroyed. We could finish them now. One assault on Valthos Prime and the Empire dies completely." Soare spoke first. Her voice was hard. "They enslaved our children. They murdered millions. They treated us like animals. They deserve no mercy. We should destroy their homeworld and make sure they never threaten anyone again." Several officers nodded in agreement. The anger in the room was real. These were people who had lost families to Vault-Tec raids. Who had spent their lives preparing for revenge. But, Captain Eunice shook her head. "If we annihilate them, we become them. We become conquerors. Killers of civilians. Is that what we fought for? To become monsters like them? They started this war," Soare argued. "They attacked Earth. They took our people. We're just finishing it. By killing how many civilians?" Yuna challenged. "Valthos Prime has a population of 3 billion. Most of them never left their world. Never hurt anyone. They're just ordinary people living under a brutal government. If we destroy the planet, we murder 3 billion innocents. How does that make us better than the Vault-Tec?" Commander Jin-ho cleared his throat. Everyone turned to him. He was quiet usually, but, when he spoke, people listened. "I've talked to hundreds of freed slaves. You know what they ask me? Not about revenge. They ask if their children will be safe. If they can go home. If this nightmare is finally over. They don't want us to become killers. They want peace." Bong-cha listened to them argue. She understood both sides. Soare's anger was justified. The Vault-Tec had done terrible things. But Yuna and Jin-ho were right too. Genocide wasn't justice. It was just more death. "We have another option," Bong-cha said finally. "We don't destroy them. We force them to surrender. Completely. Unconditionally. We disband their military. We dissolve their empire. We make them pay reparations. And, we make sure they can never threaten anyone again. Will they accept that?" Soare asked skeptically. "They will if the alternative is annihilation," Bong-cha replied. "We give them a choice. Surrender and live. Or fight and die. Either way, their empire ends today." The council voted. It wasn't unanimous. Some still wanted complete destruction. But, the majority agreed with Bong-cha's plan. They would offer terms. And, if the Vault-Tec refused, then, the fleet would do what was necessary. The human fleet advanced to Valthos Prime. 400 warships, battered but, still functional, took up positions around the Vault-Tec homeworld. They didn't attack. They just waited, weapons armed, shields up. Bong-cha opened a communication channel directly to the Imperial Council. "This is Admiral Bong-cha of the United Earth Defense Force. Your empire is broken. Your fleet is destroyed. Your subject species are in revolt. This can end two ways." On Valthos Prime, the Imperial Council gathered in their mountain chamber. First Counselor Wrath looked older than his 1,000 years. High Commander Rock stood beside him, uniform torn and stained from the battle at the threshold. Bong-cha continued, "Option 1. We reduce your homeworld to ash. We destroy every military installation. We bombard your cities until nothing remains. We do to you what you intended to do to Earth. You die. Your civilization dies. Everything you built over 3,000 years turns to dust." The council members looked at each other. Some with fear. Some with resignation. They had seen what human weapons could do. They knew this wasn't an idle threat. Option 2. You surrender unconditionally. All human slaves will be freed and returned to Earth. Your military will be disbanded completely. Your empire is dissolved. Individual Vault-Tec worlds may govern themselves, but your age of conquest is over. You will pay reparations to every species you enslaved. You will allow war crimes tribunals. And you will remember that humanity offered you mercy when you showed us none. Silence. Then, Counselor Gon spoke, and, if we refuse? If we choose to fight? Then, we will kill you all, Bongcha said simply. Not because we want to. But, because we have to. Because if we let you survive as an empire, you'll eventually rebuild and threaten us again. So we remove the threat permanently. Your choice. The Imperial Council debated for hours. Some argued for a final stand. The empire had stood for 3,000 years. It should die with honor, not surrender to former slaves. But others saw reality. The military was gone. The subject species were revolting. Even if they wanted to fight, they had nothing left to fight with. Finally, First Counselor Wrath spoke. We have ruled for 3 millennia. We conquered hundreds of worlds. We believed ourselves invincible. We were wrong. The humans have proven that. They destroyed our fleets. They freed our slaves. And now they offer us a choice that we never gave to anyone we conquered. Surrender or die. He looked around the council chamber. At the holographic displays showing their dying empire. At his fellow counselors, ancient and tired. At High Commander Rock, the military genius who had failed to stop the humans. We surrender, Wrath said quietly. Send the transmission. Tell them we accept their terms. The empire ends today. The message went out across all frequencies. The Vault-Tec Empire, 3,000 years old, surrendered unconditionally to humanity. The greatest military power in the sector had fallen to the species they had once dismissed as primitives. Across the former empire, the news spread. Vault-Tec colonies celebrated. Subject species rejoiced. The humans had won. The nightmare was over. On Earth, billions watched the broadcasts. They saw the Vault-Tec homeworld surrender. They saw human ships taking control of orbital stations. They saw Vault-Tec military leaders being arrested for war crimes. It felt surreal. 70 years ago, Earth had been burning. Now Earth's fleet was dictating terms to their conquerors. G1 watched it all from Earth. She had been home for 2 weeks now. The planet was more beautiful than she remembered. The cities were clean and modern. The people were free. No one wore slave collars. No one lived in fear. She stood in Seoul, looking up at the sky. Up there, human ships were dismantling the Vault-Tec military. Admiral Bongcha was overseeing the transition. Making sure the surrender was complete. Making sure it would last. Sung-hoon found her there. The old man who had been beside her in the mining pits. Still can't believe it's real, he asked. Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up back in the mines, Ji-won admitted. That this is all a dream. It's real, Sung-hoon assured her. We're home. We're free. And the Vault-Tec will never threaten us again. Ji-won nodded. She had enrolled in the Fleet Academy. She wanted to make sure this never happened to anyone else. She had spent 20 years as a slave. Now she would spend the rest of her life protecting people from slavery. On the Seoul Ascendant, Admiral Bongcha reviewed the final reports. All human slaves accounted for. 2 million people, freed and returning home. The Vault-Tec military, disbanded. The Empire, dissolved into hundreds of independent systems. War crimes tribunals beginning next month. Reparations being calculated. What happens now? Lieutenant Dongwu asked. Bon Chao looked out at the stars. Now. We rebuild. We help these worlds transition to freedom. We make sure the Vault-Tec never rise again. And, we prepare. Because there are other empires out there. Other threats. We got lucky this time. The Vault-Tec underestimated us. The next enemy might not. So we keep building ships. We keep building everything. Ships. Colonies. Alliances. We make sure humanity survives. Because that's what we do. We survive. In the darkness of space, beyond any empire's reach, human colony ships continued their ancient mission. Spreading humanity to distant stars. Building new worlds. Making sure that no single catastrophe could ever destroy their species again. The Vault-Tec had tried to break humanity. They had crushed Earth. They had taken millions as slaves. They had thought themselves victorious. But, they had made one critical mistake. They had let some humans escape. And, those humans had spent 70 years preparing. Building. Advancing. Waiting. Now the empire that had ruled for 3,000 years was gone. Dissolved. Broken. And, humanity stood victorious. The galaxy would remember this. Remember that humanity couldn't be conquered. That they adapted to anything. That they survived everything. That they came back stronger from every defeat. The Vault-Tec learned that lesson too late. But, others would learn it now. Humanity was no longer divided. No longer weak. They were united. Strong. Armed with technology that rivaled any empire. And, they would never be slaves again.